Hello, this is John D. Callahan, and this is my experience with glues over decades. My all-time favorite glue is 5-minute epoxy, and many years ago you could just get it in the form or brand 5-minute epoxy. Now it comes in many forms, and this is a Gorilla brand, obviously, that's a 5-minute epoxy. My favorite these days, however, is Super Glue. Super Glue makes a 5-minute epoxy that you can get at Dollar Tree. And you usually don't need that much, and this works just as well as the other 5-minute epoxies. So this is my favorite this day, fabulous product. Now as far as Super Glue itself, you can also get it in many forms. This is a form you can get at Dollar Tree, the gel and the non-gel. The non-gel is very low viscosity, which comes in handy at times. Now, another glue that I use a lot and is one of my favorite is this Goop glue. Now, this is for plumbing, but you can use it on non-plumbing jobs, and it works absolutely fabulous. This is a great product for all kinds of glue jobs. And I will show you a few examples. This is a little loop that I broke literally 50 years ago. And these are the 5-minute epoxy joints right there, where I glued it back together. See one over here. Ironically, I dropped it getting it out, so this is over here is some fresh 5-minute epoxy up here at the top. But that's an example. And I broke this cup, of all things, it's a Mr. Fix-It cup. I broke this several months ago, and these are 5-minute joints right here. A tip on using 5-minute epoxy is, even though it will set in 5 minutes, you don't really want to use it till overnight. And I often let it set longer than that, maybe weeks or months before I actually will put a full load on the joint. That's just a tip, but just follow the directions. It sets in 5 minutes, which is very, very useful. And now I will show you a couple other examples, one of Super Glue and one of Goop, but you can use them for all kinds of glue projects. I'm going to show you now a Super Glue project. These are the lights I use when I make videos, and this light I bought at a thrift store, and the shades here were pretty brittle, and I tried to move this shade and it crumbled. It literally crumbled, and it was crumbled into many pieces, at least half a dozen pieces. And you can see the joints here. I just carefully super glued it all back together. See the joints? And it's completely functional, and you hardly notice it. This is a guide telescope that used to be on a larger telescope that I built. And I designed and built this mount for it so that you kind of can adjust it like this. And I built this 50 years ago, and all these joints here are done with 5-minute epoxy. And they're just as strong as the day I built this thing. A careless mechanic broke apart my dash in this car, and they gave me some super glue. I told them I could super glue it, so they gave me some super glue, and I super glued it back together. These are all super glue joints. This was years ago, and it's held up beautifully. This is a 2001 Dodge Durango that I bought used and repaired for my own use. And one of my repairs was this upholstery. There was a big rip right here. And I used Goop glue, which is flexible. And this was about a decade ago. And I repaired the rip in the upholstery. upholstery. Similarly, this control panel was broken away from this piece of molding, and it was hanging down there, hanging here, and it really wasn't usable. So I took the molding off and I put the controls back where they belong, and I used goop glue again. And it's held up beautifully. Everything works. Again, about a decade ago. This lamp broke apart when I moved, and this part here was completely broken apart from the base. And so I carefully put it back together, and I used goop glue again. And this right here, this is a goop glue joint all around here. And then I colored it with a brown felt tip pen. And it's just as strong and just as good as new. So that's my experience with glues over decades.